Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
I always love hearing stories about people that are generating enough rental income that they were able to leave their job and support themselves off their rentals. But I feel like there's a misconception that you need a lot of money to do this. Jhanel, you've pulled it off. Let me ask you, when you were first getting started, did you have a lot of money and a big savings?
Absolutely not. I was making $38,000 a year, and I got my first property using a student loan and credit cards.
On the podcast today, we're going to figure out how Jhanel did this, how she went from not having a big salary and not having any money in savings to buying enough rental properties that she was able to leave her job and support herself off of her rentals. Joining us on the podcast today from Philadelphia is Jhanel Wilson. We'll take a quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Jhanel. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Jhanel, when did you start buying rental properties?
I was 22 and I didn't really plan to start. I kind of got thrown into it when my dad's house was going up for sheriff's sale for back taxes. I was still in college and I found out that the house was going to get sold because it's on the same block as my grandmother. She called me and told me. Now, I'd never been inside this property, and when she told me about it, I just did the first thing I knew how to do, which is get a student loan. I paid the back taxes, which were about $5,000 at a time, which was a lot to a college student. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a job. I would live off of refund checks, and to have to pay $5,000 back in 2003, it was a lot. But I just want to save my dad's house, and that's just how I did it.
Did you save it?
Yeah. Okay. I paid the back taxes, and then I went back to school. And when I graduated, I went inside the house for the first time, and I found out that it was a total rehab. You could see the sky through the roof. It had no floors in areas, and the back wall was falling apart. My grandmother, she just suggested that I sell the house. And right away, I got an offer of $45,000, which was a lot of money to me back then. Yeah. I thought the house was worth about 25. So if he would have offered that much, I would have sold it. But once he offered me 45, it got me thinking. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to try and figure this out. And that same weekend, I went to the hairdresser and was telling people what was going on. And someone owned a house around the corner. And she told me that she got a home equity line of credit from Wells Fargo. I mean, it was Wachovia at the time. And they did what's called a drive-by appraisal. This is in 2004. Things were apparently going crazy. This was before the housing crash. So they were doing all kinds of crazy things. So I said, what do you mean it's a drive-by appraisal? She said, they don't go inside the house at all. I was like, this sounds like a great idea. So I fixed up the outside of the house. I did the roof. I got new windows. I painted the front. And the house appraised for $70,000. I couldn't believe it. Wow. So I got approved for a loan of $63,000, but it had an old mortgage on it for like $40,000. So it had a ton of stuff. It had water liens, more real estate taxes, a mechanics lien, a bunch of things, and it added up to $45,000. So I wound up paying that at the table. So it's a good thing I didn't sell it. So what I had left over, I hired the contractor to come back and do the work, but I had problems, regular contractor problems, neighbor problems, city problems. But anyway, I got through it in about 6 months, and I put 2 Section 8 tenants in there. It was a duplex, and I was making more than my paycheck. I was getting $1,150 a month. My paycheck was like barely over $1,000 at the time. So I was like, oh my God, this is what that investor saw. And after I paid my mortgage, it was $700, and $700 a month to a 22-year-old. I was rich.
That's huge.
I was rich. This was in 2005 at this point. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm going to do this real estate thing. And so that's how I got started. Yeah. Now I have over 100 apartments, and my portfolio is worth over $12 million.
Incredible. So for that first property, how much were you all in with the back taxes and
You know what?
Everything else?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I know it was more than what it was worth. I paid more than the $70,000.
Okay, but at the end of the day, you have got a $700 mortgage.
Yes,
you got $1,150 a month.
I was focused on the cash flow. So the mortgage was actually $300.
Yeah,
and I made, after I paid the mortgage, I was making $700. But yeah, that's all I focused on.
Wow, and so you it sounds like you accidentally found the BRRRR strategy.
Well, I didn't refinance back then. I didn't start refinancing until 2009, which is a whole nother story. But no, back then I left all the money in the properties because all I wanted was that cash flow. So I would spend like my whole paycheck. I would do anything I had to do to fix up a house just to get that cash flow. My second property was a duplex. I've got an FHA loan. I paid weekly out of my paychecks to get it done, and I cash flowed $900 a month from that one. I have no idea how much I spent on that one. I probably overspent.
Right.
I was paying people by the day, which I think was more than what I should have, but still, I just wanted that cash flow. So I made $700 from that house and $900 from the other one. And I was just trying to collect the cash flow. Didn't matter how much I put in there, because if I would put it into the stock market or put it in my 401k, it would be nothing. So I just compared it to that.
Right. Now, how many rentals did you need before you quit your job?
So I didn't pre-calculate that because I plan on working forever.
Yeah.
My job was pretty cushy. I worked for the government. But things kind of got hard, which is what made me leave. But I pretty much left when I had all the components that I needed. When I left after 8 years of investing, I had a good construction crew. I had my financing in order. I had my hard money lender who I would use for the purchase and renovation. I had my lender that would refinance me out for a lower rate. I had my deal flow. I was buying houses at auction. I was using wholesalers. So it's like I had everything I needed. I just needed more of my own time so I could scale, which I didn't even realize that my job was taking this time away from me. But once things got hard with my boss left. I got a new boss. You know how that can be. Mm-hmm. Your boss can determine your overall happiness at work sometimes. Yeah. So once that happened, and then we had a hiring freeze, so I couldn't even get support in the pilot plan because I was an engineer. It just like all the signs pointed to me leaving. So my income from my properties was about $70,000, and I was making $78,000 from my job. And I was like, all right, I guess I can do this now.
Yeah.
This is before I had kids, and I didn't realize how much money I was spending just because I had both incomes. I had the work money from my job and the money from the real estate. And I was like happy hours every weekend and drinks on me. It was a huge adjustment when I did finally leave. But yeah, I left when my income was $70,000 from my rental properties.
Did it go smooth? Because a lot of times rental income can be volatile, where, maybe all of a sudden you have a couple of big repairs come up, or an eviction comes out of nowhere. Like, were you a little bit worried that, all right, well, I've been making $70,000 off the rentals, but what if a bunch of stuff comes up? Am I going to be okay? Like, did you have any fear around that?
Nope, I didn't have any fear.
Okay.
Because I rent to Section 8, which they give you guaranteed rent. So I could always pay the mortgages, and I had money left over. And whenever I did a project, because I was doing a BRRRR strategy then, I was getting all my capital back out. So I always had new capital. The only time where money was tight is if I took on a big project, which is what I did like 3 years after I quit. I took on a big project, and that was when things got tight. But before then, no, things were pretty easy. It felt like I was definitely destined to be doing this. Again, I was getting big deals, big packages. And when you're out in it, you get all the great deals. You don't get things that are picked over. So I would buy a property, fix it up, BRRRR it, and I would have an extra $100,000 after I paid back everyone. So it's like I had plenty of money. And if I needed money, I would just flip a property and make a quick $50,000. So no, I was never worried about the money. But,
wow. Okay. Yeah. So what are you buying? Like, it sounded like earlier on you were talking about a duplex. Are you buying a lot of duplexes?
My portfolio is mostly triplexes, because I discovered that they were being sold for so cheap, but they appraised really high. And so I would often get large cash out checks from them. So I have mostly triplexes and quads, but I have some duplexes in there because they're easy to manage.
And how are you finding properties?
I get most of them from auctions. Auctions has been the place where I get most of my properties, but I also use wholesalers. Wholesalers are the ones who contact the owners and negotiate a deal, and then they'll sell it to an investor at a discount.
Okay, so you get a property and you're looking for properties that need work. Are you doing like a full gut rehab, or is it more cosmetic?
I can do either. It just depends on what contractor I'm using at the time and what they like. Like I will do whatever my contractor likes.
Yeah.
So, the one who I had before, he can do anything really. And I would just kind of buy any kind of good deal. And, I would do either. Right now, I'm mostly doing cosmetic because I don't have him anymore. And I don't want to take on a big renovation without my main guy.
Yeah. Okay. So you find a property, you have him do the cosmetic work. How long does it generally take him to turn over a property?
Things should take, like if you buy something that's within your wheelhouse, like something that's not too advanced for you, it should take between 3 to 6 months.
Okay. 3 to 6 months. And then at the end of the 6 months, you would do your refi and then you take out whatever equity is in there.
Yeah. Up to 80%. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then what are you doing with that money? Because it sounds like you've got a lot of cash flow every month from your properties. What are you doing with the money when you take it out?
So I was just reinvesting it. I'm not reinvesting it anymore. I think I'm pretty much where I'd want to be.
Yeah.
So the last property I bought was a 10 unit and I bought that during COVID. So I haven't really started it yet, but yeah, I was reinvesting it. So
okay,
now whatever cash out I do from that 10 unit, which should be like 300,000, I think. I would like to start being a lender, but yeah, that's down the line.
Can we take a look at one of your deals? Like I'm interested here to get some details on one of your deals. Maybe we could talk about a recent 3-unit.
Yeah. So it was during COVID, like right when it first happened, which was March 2020. And I don't know if you were investing back then, but a lot of lenders decided to close up shop because they didn't know what was happening. Mm-hmm. And so this wholesaler had a $40,000 deposit on these properties. And so he got anxious because he couldn't find a buyer. Now, I don't have that much money. They were $250 a piece, $1 million. And most people didn't have that money. So I have a hard money lender who I've been using for over 10 years. He'll basically fund about anything without even coming in the property. I can send him pictures and he'll fund it. And so I contacted him and I said, hey, I got this great deal on the table. I'm about to refinance these 2 other properties that I just finished and I will have the down payment, which was like $200,000. And what happened was the wholesaler, apparently they were trying to get the deal themselves too. And so once I got the money, I had everything secured, they backed out the deal. When they came to me 2 months later with this deal again, he had better financing. He had financing that was 6%. Now my hard money lender charges 10%. 6%, I only had to put down 10% down payment. I didn't have any payments during the time of the construction. So most times when you have a hard money loan, you do have to make payments. You got to put 20% down. But he had found this amazing lender that just made this deal even sweeter. It was like almost like it was meant to be. So I bought them and the price was lower. The price was $200,000 now. So I bought them for $200,000 a piece. They only needed about $100,000 in rehab. One was worse, one was better, but it averaged $100,000. So I was all in $300,000. They appraised for $600,000.
Wow.
A piece.
Incredible.
Yes, I had my first. It was almost $500,000. I had my first check for over $400,000.
Wow. That's incredible. That's really incredible.
And it took me a year to do, but, and it was hard because it was COVID. It was hard finding labor, the material shortages. It wasn't easy. Okay. So don't think it was easy. I had to work for that money, but it was worth it. Yeah.
And something to point out, I mean, just for anyone that is maybe new, when you take cash out, that's not taxable. That's a loan. So that's actual money in your pocket.
It's not taxable and the tenants pay it back. So I think I can't remember what the payment is right off the top of my head, but after I pay all the expenses, I would make $1,500 a month from each one. And this is without any of my own money involved. No, it's not my own money. I took out all this $400,000 and my tenants pay it back every month. And above that, I get $6,000 total.
Now, a lot of people are scared of Section 8. You know, they've maybe heard horror stories, but it doesn't sound like it's been scary or hard for you?
So the big thing is the screening. Sometimes people just rely on a guaranteed income and don't think about how your tenant's going to be. But your tenant definitely impacts your overall well-being. You don't want someone who's constantly calling. You don't want someone who's constantly doing damage. So you have to screen your tenant. And the way I screen my tenant isn't really traditional. Like I don't check credits because a lot of them don't have good credit. And it's not because they're not responsible, but because they haven't been taught about financial literacy or personal finance. So I don't hold that against them. But I do screen based off of an interview. And I see where their mentality is. If they're still in a place where they're in victimhood, they blame everybody for their problems, they're not trying to do better in life and level up, then I do not rent to them. Because if they want to blame their boyfriend or the last landlord for everything, they're going to come to you for every little problem. And when you don't do it, they're not going to they're not going to try and fix it themselves, basically. So it's like, I'll help you as much as I can, but I need you to help yourself too.
That's interesting. Okay, so how they present themselves is more important than, say, their credit score or anything you're going to find in their background.
Yes, absolutely. Because sometimes they get taken advantage of. Friends might use their credit, or they might get a car that they don't realize they can't afford, or they don't take into account insurance. So just things like that just haven't been trained or planned on. But they will value where they live and they will pay their rent. So I'll do the interview and I'll also check with their landlord to make sure they're paying the rent, and I'll do an eviction check. So a lot of them don't have any evictions. The ones that do have evictions, it has to be older than 5 years and they have to have paid their judgment.
So it sounds like you're self-managing your properties.
Yes.
Right? So how do you do that? Like, is that because you said you have how many? 100 and something?
Yeah, I have over 100. So I've tried property managers. Like when I had a baby, people were just telling me, you should be using property managers with the portfolio you have. And so I tried it, and they just were not efficient. They weren't turning over units fast enough. And I know my standards are high, but I will give them like 2 months. Like after 2 months, and you haven't even come there to paint, it's a problem. And then they would tell me that the rent I'm requesting is too high. I'll say, okay, go ahead and lower it. And they still not finding tenants. Then the repairs were just outrageous. And I wouldn't even know the repairs until at the end of the month when I got my money and it had all these deductions. And so I was just like, you know what? I don't think I'm meant to do this with a property manager. I'm just so much better. Oh, another thing, they didn't treat my tenants nicely. Like I have screened my tenants. I have great people, and they were just not answering calls. They just weren't being respectful. So I was like, you know what? I'll take this back over again. And what I started doing was managing in-house, and I hired a virtual assistant. So I got a property management software, a professional one. I use Buildium. The two popular ones are Buildium and AppFolio. So I use Buildium, and it pretty much tracks everything. It does your accounting. You can pay your vendors through it. The tenants can sign for automatic payments. They can pay in the store, CVS, 7-Eleven, and it tracks maintenance. So my tenant can put in a maintenance request, and it can go directly to the vendor, depending on how I have it set up. And I just oversee it. So with that happening and the automatic payments, it almost runs itself. But I do have a VA who takes care of when a tenant gets angry. She can talk to them about it, or try to kind of weed out all the extra backstory when a tenant calls with problems, because they always want to tell a story. And I'm like, just get to the main points and tell maintenance what she needs. Right. So yeah, I can pretty much do it myself with the maintenance crew, my VA, and me. It's like I'm self-employed.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've really kind of taken yourself out of it. So if a tenant has a maintenance problem, they're dealing with your virtual assistant, and then she would call the repair person.
Yep.
And so you're just kind of overseeing the process to make sure everything's flowing the way that it should. Yeah.
And then I step in if there's a problem that someone can't handle, or basically.
Yeah. And then with the Section 8, with the money coming in automatically, it's just just logging in your bank and making sure all the money showed up.
Yeah, well, my virtual assistant, she checks the statements. So when you get paid from PHA, she'll go in and check the statement and make sure everything lines up. So yeah, everything is, and she'll send me a report.
When you think about it and break down what Jhanel has done with her investing, it's really pretty simple. She's built a team with 4 key people. The first person is her wholesaler that's out there finding her properties. The second person is the hard money lender that's giving her the money to buy the properties and fix them up. The third person is her contractor, and she works with her contractor by only buying properties that he's comfortable fixing up. And then the fourth person is her virtual assistant that's talking to the tenants, dealing with any problems that might come up. And Jhanel's role is really to oversee everything and make sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing and making sure the numbers work when she's looking at a new deal. But it really, when you break it down, without her team, it would be so much harder for her to do what she's done. But by leveraging other people, she's been able to build a lot of wealth and grow a great rental portfolio. Well, if anybody wants to reach out to Jhanel, I've got her Instagram on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 482. I'd like to thank Chaley Ridge for sponsoring today's episode. If you're looking to buy a rental property, whether you're just getting started or you want to add to your portfolio, reach out to Chaley. She's a nationwide lender. She's got a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something that'll work for you in your situation. If you want to find out more or you want to talk to Chaley personally, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. Make sure you hit the follow button, and you'll be notified every single Tuesday when I put out a new interview. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.